Boiled hope, dining in Titanic's third class. Hey friends, tonight we're peeling back the silver-plated illusion of the RMS Titanic. But forget the caviar and champagne. We're not up in the crystal chandelier ballrooms of first class. No, we're heading down, way down, to the tiled floors and long wooden tables of third class where dinner was served with a side of boiled potatoes, a lot of steam, and just enough dignity to make you sit a little taller. Now, before we get into it, take a second to hit that like button and subscribe, but only if you enjoy this kind of deep dive. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. It's always amazing to see this little corner of the internet come alive from all over the world. So dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that cozy hum, and let's step into the warm, steamy world of Titanic's most underrated dining room. You didn't expect much when you booked your third-class ticket. You weren't hoping for lobster or napkins folded into swans. You were just praying for a bed that wasn't shared with livestock and a meal that didn't try to escape your fork. You'd heard the horror stories' dark, rat-filled steerage compartments where the concept of ventilation was a cruel joke. But then you walk into the third-class dining saloon on F deck and pause. It's nice. No high balas, no wandering chickens, no suspicious puddles. Instead, you're met with long wooden tables, chairs that don't double as crates, and walls that are white, not peeling white, but intentionally white. There are overhead electric lights. Yes, electric, not turnips, with candles stuck in them. And the tiled floors are clean patterned and feel solid underfoot, like they were meant to be walked on by people, not livestock. You blink. Did you wander into second class by accident? Nope. This is third class. Welcome. And here's the thing. While the dining saloon might be located deep in the ship's bowels, somewhere between the boilers and someone's leftover suitcase, it doesn't feel like a dungeon. In fact, for many passengers, it's better than what they left behind back home. It's warmer, cleaner, calmer. There's more food here than some families saw in a week, and there's no one yelling at you to hurry up and shovel coal. Sure, you don't get a menu. No one's asking if you'd prefer duck confit or grilled salmon with a dill reduction. But the food is served hot at regular times by stewards who, get this, don't scream at you. You sit at a real table next to other immigrants, travelers, hopefuls, and shoeless relatives. There's no violin music, no wine list. The bread might double as a weapon in an emergency, but the feeling, that strange, slow-burning sense that you're not just cargo anymore, that's something. That's rare. For once, you're not a worker, not a tenant, not a stowaway. You're a passenger, and that matters. So, what exactly did third-class dining look like? Picture a long open room stretching across the ship's F deck, filled with rows of bolted-down tables and benches. It feels a little like a school cafeteria if the students all carried steamer trunks and spoke 10 different languages. The tables are sturdy, the benches just wide enough for comfort, but narrow enough to keep you humble. Above you, electric lights glow steady, no flickering. They're not gas lamps or oil-lit lanterns, just quiet, humming electricity. You've read about this in the papers. Places where light comes from a switch, not a flame. Now you're sitting under them, pretending this is all normal. The walls, smooth, clean, painted white, not used to be white. No mildew, no drips, no mystery stains. It's clean, suspiciously clean. You're not sure if you're in third class or in a dream about being middle class. You slide into your spot at the bench elbow to elbow with people you've never met and probably won't understand. A Swedish man nods politely. A Sicilian woman blesses the bread. A toddler with a spoon twice their size is actively testing gravity. It's chaos, but it's organized chaos. And then the food comes. It's not luxurious, but it's hot. It's served on time. There's a smell in the air, mostly boiled potatoes with a subtle hint of institutional soap, and the faint background roar of 70 conversations in 20 languages. You eat together, shoulder to shoulder. No one's jammed into a corner. No one's squatting on crates. For most of the passengers here, this is dignity. This is the closest thing to being treated like a real person in a long time. Now don't get the idea that this was a perfectly smooth operation. Oh no. You quickly learn that third-class dining runs on a shift system, because there's no way 700-plus passengers are all going to eat at once. It's not like first class where the stewards gently inform you that your table is ready. Here, it's more of an organic migration pattern. People start to stand up. You hear clinks. A voice mutters, "It's our turn." You move. And the shifts, there are 3. The early wave, these lucky souls get their freshest stew, the softest bread, and chairs that don't squeak ominously. The middle wave, that's you. You get the stew that's still warm, bread that's probably okay, and a table that smells faintly of boiled cabbage and regret. The final shift, these are the brave, the survivors. They sit among crumbs and chaos, sip lukewarm tea, and contemplate life. They're not so much eating as philosophizing. But no matter when you eat, the rule is simple. Eat now, talk later, because someone is already eyeing your seat. And yet, even with the rushed pacing, the shared cutlery, and the occasional unidentifiable ingredient, it works. It's not elegant. It's not glamorous. But it's good enough. And for the tired, hopeful, slightly damp masses in third class, that means a lot. You finish your meal, wipe your mouth with your sleeve. Napkins are a luxury, and step aside. A steward clears your plate. Another shift steps in. It's a relay race, powered by potatoes tea and the quiet resilience of people trying to cross an ocean for a better life. Breakfast in steerage tea, porridge, and pretend butter. Morning on the Titanic arrives in third class like a polite cough. It doesn't knock, it just sort of appears. There's no grand bell-tolling breakfast, no steward pulling back velvet curtains, just the muffled cry of someone else's baby, the creak of bunk springs, and the undeniable scent of something hot and vaguely edible making its way through the air. You rise from your bunk, maybe not quite fresh, but upright. Dressing, if we're generous with the term, involves flattening yesterday's shirt and convincing your shoes to cooperate for one more day. And then, guided by the pull of steam and carbohydrates, you head toward the dining saloon. There's no applause when you arrive, no place card with your name in swirly script. Just the clatter of tin dishes, the occasional thump of a tray being dropped, and a steward nodding vaguely in your direction as if to say, "Yes, sit, eat. It's food, probably." On the table, the morning lineup is modest but determined. A bowl of porridge sits waiting thick enough to mortar bricks with but somehow comforting. You don't ask what grain it's made from. No one does. It's hot, it's beige, and it sticks to your ribs like a loyal pet. Next to it, bread. Slices so sturdy you suspect they moonlight as coasters. They're dense, dry, and not interested in being anything other than what they are functional. Somewhere nearby, a small pat of margarine lies on a plate, performing an Oscar-worthy impersonation of butter. It fools no one, but no one complains either. And then, yes, the tea, served in a tin mug that could double as a knuckle duster in a bar fight. The tea is dark steaming and brewed strong enough to power small machinery. It's slightly metallic, vaguely tannic, and unmistakably third class. You take a sip and feel your digestive system sit up straight. Now, if you're lucky, really lucky, there's marmalade. It arrives on only a handful of tables, often under the watchful eye of the most responsible adult present. A single jar small enough to hide in a coat pocket is treated like treasure. Spoons dip in carefully. No double dipping, no sudden moves. This is citrus diplomacy at its finest. And yet, for all its simplicity, breakfast hits just right. There's no bacon sizzling or eggs smiling up at you, no sausages sad or otherwise, but there's warmth, there's quiet, there's routine. It's the kind of meal that doesn't excite you, but it grounds you like a wool blanket for your stomach. You won't be raving about the flavor, but you will be grateful for the stability. And on a ship that sways more than it should and is filled with strangers speaking 7 different languages, stability is golden. As noon rolls around, the ship sways gently beneath your boots. Your porridge has settled somewhere between your chest and your soul, and your body like clockwork, reminds you it's time for more. Specifically, dinner, which is confusing because it's midday, but this is Edwardian England, and they don't care about your modern understanding of lunch. Dinner is the big one, the anchor meal, the culinary main event of the day. You shuffle into the dining saloon again, part of the second shift, or maybe the third. Who knows anymore? Time on the Titanic isn't measured by hours, it's measured by stew appearances. The room already hums with activity. The smell of boiled ambition and beefy hope hangs in the air. The stewards move quickly, sliding bowls of soup in front of each guest with military precision. It's hot. It's vaguely vegetable adjacent. It's so beige, you'd need a color chart to identify it. No one asks what's in it. Even the cook probably doesn't know, but it's comforting, like a bath in a bowl. If the bath had turnips and possibly a hint of thyme, or shoe leather, hard to tell. Then comes the star of the show, roast beef, generously described as roast because it was cooked with heat, and beef because it wasn't poultry. It's tough, chewy, determined to be eaten. Alongside it, a literal mountain of boiled potatoes. White, fluffy, slightly overconfident in size. You half expect a goat to appear and climb it. There might be carrots, maybe peas. You hope they're vegetables and not just decorative. They add color and the illusion of balance. And the gravy. Oh, the gravy. Thick, salty, and poured not so much to flavor the meal, but to unite it. It acts like a culinary glue binding meat, potatoes, and mystery veggies into one harmonious blob. And yes, the bread is back. Of course it is. Titanic's third class runs on bread the way modern society runs on Wi-Fi. You use it to mop up, to pace your bites, or to just chew while you think about nothing at all. Around you, the room is a live chatter in Swedish, Irish, Italian, Serbian. You don't understand half of it, but everyone smiles and nods in universal, I'm full and mildly impressed language. A boy across the room is playing a harmonica. An older man is gently snoozing mid-chew. No one cares. It's part of the rhythm. You toast your tea mug to no one in particular. 3 wins today, warm-fed, seated. The meal ends with a clean plate, a cleared table, and a vague, unspoken agreement that wasn't fancy, but it was enough. The stewards begin the next turnover. Another wave lines up behind you, hungry and ready to dive into their own version of roast beef. And you're slightly fuller and just a little more content, make your way back to your bunk, ready to do it all again at supper. Supper at Sea Cold Cuts, Crumb Wars, and the Cult of Tea. By the time supper rolls around, you've already circled half the ship, twice gotten lost, once dodged 2 stampedes of barefoot children, and narrowly avoided a very persuasive man selling genuine silk scarves made entirely of something not silk. In other words, it's been a day. And while dinner, remember that was lunch, felt like a roast beef-themed event with minor vegetable cameos, supper is something else entirely. Supper doesn't try to impress. Supper just wants you to sit down, chew slowly, and not start a fight over table space. You slide into your seat, maybe a wobbly bench at a slightly tilted table, and wait. The steward arrives with the kind of energy that says, I've delivered 300 trays today and may drop dead mid-sausage. He plunks down a plate in front of you without a word. It's minimal. On it, cold meats, thinly sliced, pale in color, and seasoned with whatever was left in the spice bin, which may have just been salt. It's the sort of food that doesn't shout it, just quietly exists. You poke it with your fork, trying to guess its origin: pork, chicken, unusually cooperative fish. You don't ask. The mystery is part of the charm. Next to the meat is a slice of cheese. It's white, crumbly, and so flavorless it might actually be a philosophical statement. But it's there. It's not moldy. That's enough. Naturally, there's bread. At this point, it's basically your roommate. You two have shared meals, emotions, and occasional judgmental stares when someone asks for seconds. You chew and rhythm your jaw, finding its third-class tempo. Around you, quiet conversations float over the hum of the engines and the soft clink of utensils. And then the true constant of third class, the tea. It's back again, still strong, still dark, still capable of stripping paint or curing homesickness. It arrives in your familiar, handleless mug, steaming gently like it knows it's the only warm liquid you'll get before bed. You sip it slowly, not because you love it, but because finishing it too fast would mean you're done. And supper isn't something to rush, not because it's grand, but because it's yours. A few tables over, someone starts softly singing. A lullaby, maybe, or a folk song from home. A child giggles. Someone sneezes so violently it sounds like a goat getting exercised. No one blinks. There's no dessert. There's barely fruit. But there's a feeling, a kind of shared quiet. A group consensus that for the next 20 minutes we will all chew peacefully past the tea and avoid kicking each other under the bench. The lights seem dimmer, or maybe your eyes are just adjusting to the pace of the day. Supper isn't about flavor. It's about closure. A final act in the three-meal play that is third-class life on the Titanic. You finish the last bite. It's not satisfying exactly, but it's enough. You lean back, not full, not empty, just steady. Someone nearby folds their napkin or what might be their sleeve. Someone else wipes their mouth on their hand and calls it etiquette. You nod to the person beside you, no need for words. Supper has spoken. And just as you rise to leave, you pause. You notice something. The tea isn't half bad anymore. Maybe it's grown on you. Or maybe, just maybe, you've become part of the third-class rhythm where expectations shrink, gratitude expands, and flavor is measured less by taste than by togetherness. You walk out a little slower, the hum of the engines keeping time with your steps. And already, you wonder, what's for breakfast? Thirst and tea, the curious case of third-class sobriety. At some point, maybe during your third cup of Titanic-strength tea, or while staring into the beige abyss of yet another bowl of stew, you start to wonder, where's the beer? After all, you're crossing the Atlantic. You're chasing a new life. You've survived 3 meals built almost entirely from root vegetables. If anyone deserves a pint, it's you. But in third class, no such luck. Officially, alcohol is not served to third-class passengers. Not outlawed exactly, just discouraged. Strongly. As in, good luck getting any, unless you smuggled it on board or know a steward with a secret flask and zero morals. Now here's the thing. That doesn't mean people are sober. You start noticing things. Like the man at the next table who carries a lumpy coat, like it's guarding national secrets. Or the group of Irish lads who return from deck walks looking suspiciously cheerful. And then there's the Italian guy who insists his tea is spicy. That's not a language barrier. That's alcohol talking. Word around the dining saloon is there's technically a third-class bar somewhere. A tiny one. Hidden. Operated under rules so obscure you'd need to be part bureaucrat, part magician to understand them. If you're bold enough to try, you might find it behind a door that looks like a broom closet, guarded by a steward who greets you with a look that says, "Do you even know what you're asking for?" You could ask for beer, you could get a stare, or a cup of something unidentifiable. Either way, most passengers in steerage make peace with the fact tea or water. That's your beverage catalog. But that doesn't mean they miss alcohol. Most are too exhausted, too cautious, or too broke to chase a buzz. Some are still recovering from the questionable cider they drank the night before boarding, and many are watching their kids with one eye and their wallets with the other. Plus, when you're in a shared room with 10 people, half of whom snore like dying goats, staying sober has advantages, like remembering where your bunk is, or not confusing a lifeboat with an outhouse. So you take another sip of strong, unsweetened tea. Raise your cup in solidarity to the man with the suspiciously bulging coat, and remind yourself, sobriety has its perks, especially when the ship is big, the water is cold, and your bed is somewhere between rustic and barely a hammock. And besides what third class lacks in wine, it makes up for in stamina. Because stew is coming, again, and you're going to need your full faculties for that. Stew eternal, the boiling backbone of third class. Eventually, maybe after your 4th serving, maybe your 5th, you stop asking what the meal is and instead ask, how many ways can one ship serve stew? Because aboard the RMS Titanic third class doesn't run on elegance, it doesn't run on variety, it runs on stew, that glorious, mysterious, ever-present, oddly comforting dish that appears at breakfast, lunch, dinner, supper, and possibly in your dreams. Now let's be clear, this isn't some lovingly slow-simmered masterpiece laced with bay leaves and whispers of thyme. No, this is third-class stew. It's not meant to impress, it's meant to endure. Thick, hot, and beige, in a way that defies the laws of color theory, this stew is a chameleon. One day it's Irish stew, the next meat and vegetable. Sometimes it's just labeled hot. And honestly, that last one is the most accurate. What's in it? That depends on the day, on the weather, on how generous the cook was feeling. There's meat, sort of. You think it's beef, but sometimes it chews like goat or mutton or an unusually disciplined carrot. Then there are potatoes, always potatoes. Some recognizable vegetables, turnips, onions, the occasional renegade pea, and salt. Lots of salt. If you're lucky, the stew hits your tongue while still lava-level hot. If you're unlucky, you wait too long, and it congeals into something that resembles paste or grout or regret. But here's the thing. Stew might be humble, but it's respected. Men sit around it like philosophers staring into its depths as though answers lie somewhere near the bottom. Is that a chunk of beef or just a particularly assertive parsnip? No one knows, and no one questions it. The real miracle, though, isn't what's in the bowl. It's how many bowls the kitchen manages to serve. Hundreds of them, daily, each one piping hot, each one somehow identical and slightly different at the same time, as if the stew isn't one recipe, but a sentient being constantly adapting to its surroundings. And down in the belly of the ship, behind heavy doors and sweat-stained aprons, a battalion of cooks is keeping that cauldron alive. You imagine them now, faces flushed, sleeves rolled, stirring something the size of a small pond. A pot so big it could host a community swim. A ladle like a shovel. A cook mumbling encouragement to the carrots as they sink beneath the surface. You don't get seconds, not officially. This isn't a cruise. This is third class. You eat what you're given, you smile like you meant it, and you definitely pretend you didn't just bite into something that might have once been part of a boot. Still, you finish it every time. Because it's hot, it's filling, and for reasons you can't explain, it's starting to taste like comfort. You scrape the bowl clean with your bread, which by now might as well be your trusty sidekick. You lean back, a little heavier, a little saltier, a little more satisfied. Somehow, you're okay with the fact that tomorrow's stew will taste exactly the same. Because aboard Titanic, stew isn't just a dish, it's a lifestyle. And you're fully committed. The Cutlery Chronicles, spoons, elbows, and third-class tablecraft. Before your first meal aboard Titanic, you probably imagined you'd be eating with your hands, or maybe a sharpened stick carved into a spoon by some guy named Liam from County Cork. After all, this is third class. Expectations are low. You half expected to share a bowl with strangers and take turns gnawing. But then, surprise, the steward hands you actual cutlery. Not gold-plated, not monogrammed with a family crest, but clean. Metal, matching. A fork, a spoon, and on truly ambitious days a knife that has definitely seen some things. It cuts mostly. Eventually, if you coax it the right way. It's a little moment, a small detail. But in third class, small details matter. Because these aren't just utensils, they're symbols. Tiny steel reminders that even down here on F deck, you are a passenger. And passengers get dignity, sort of. Your plate is white enamel, sturdy, slightly chipped, like it's been through multiple lifetimes of stew service and carries deep personal trauma. It clinks when it's placed on the table, a gentle warning that the meal is officially underway. Then there's your mug, tin or ceramic, no handle, no grace. It just is. It holds tea, water, or whatever suspicious liquid makes its way into rotation. It also doubles as a hand warmer, a percussion instrument, and in extreme cases, a self-defense tool. You grow weirdly attached to it. Napkins. Please. You have sleeves, Or if you're seated closely enough, someone else's sleeve, maybe a corner of the tablecloth if you're daring, or more realistically, you just try not to spill. This is Titanic's third class. You don't wipe your mouth between bites. You let the tea steam it off. The tables are bolted to the floor probably to prevent a Titanic-style soup slide when the sea gets feisty. The benches are communal, long enough to fit several passengers, narrow enough to guarantee you're always in physical contact with at least one stranger's elbow. You learn to lean strategically, brace your core. Eating becomes a full-body sport, especially when there's stew involved. Over time, you develop your own system. Fork in the left, spoon in the right, napkin if you imagine one hard enough in your lap. You chase boiled carrots across your plate like a surgeon. You scoop cabbage with tactical precision. You discover that the best way to butter bread without it crumbling into sad, floury debris is to whisper gentle encouragement. Eating in third class isn't just a necessity, it's a skill. And when the meal ends, you don't toss your cutlery into a bin. You place it gently on your plate. 'Cause this is the Titanic, and even in third class there are standards. Kind of. You rise from the bench, still chewing slightly. You nod to your spoon like an old friend, not sure when you'll see it again. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't plated like a Michelin star appetizer. But it worked, and for one brief, boiled potato-filled moment, you felt like you belonged. The ghost kitchen, feeding 700 with a stew cauldron and a prayer. By your third or fourth day aboard the Titanic, a question starts to bubble up in your mind somewhere between your subconscious and your slightly overtaxed stomach. Who is cooking all of this? Because it's not just you eating stew 3 times a day. It's hundreds of passengers, every single meal. That's not a dinner service. That's a military operation. And the miracle it all happens quietly, invisibly, efficiently. The answer, as with most logistical wizardry on the Titanic, lies deep below deck. Far from the chandeliers and champagne, in a part of the ship passengers weren't meant to see, is the third-class galley, a hidden world of boiling water, clanging pots, and enough heat to start a small volcano. You won't ever go down there unless you're very lost or very nosy, but the kitchen crew doesn't need your applause. They're too busy wrestling ladles the size of pitchforks and yelling over roaring stoves. They are the unsung heroes of the potato economy. This isn't some quaint open kitchen with a chef in a tall hat gently reducing a red wine juice. No, this is a culinary battlefield. There are cauldrons that could bathe a full-grown horse, bread trays so large they double as emergency sleds, knives so blunt they probably filed down their will to live. And despite all that, the food arrives, hot, regularly, mostly edible. That's more than some land kitchens can claim. Menus are designed with military precision. You don't get creative in the third-class galley. No one's saying, let's try a rosemary infusion. You use carrots if you have carrots. You subtract meat if you run out of animal. And yet, there's order. Somehow, the stew's always ready. The tea's always hot. The bread is always there, staring into your soul like it knows your weaknesses. It's not flashy, but it's dependable. Imagine the kitchen staff sleeves, rolled-up faces, slick with steam, moving in perfect sync, like a ballet troupe powered by caffeine and raw determination. No one's taking selfies. No one's complaining about their knife set. They're peeling, stirring, chopping, boiling, constantly. You think of them now as you spread margarine across a piece of bread that might predate the iceberg. You raise your spoon not dramatically, not with fanfare, but with quiet respect. Because somewhere far below, someone's making 700 more bowls of stew right now. And they don't even get to sit down and eat it. You'll never know their names. But without them, your stomach would be growling, your tea would be cold, and your entire voyage would feel a lot more like suffering and a lot less like traveling. So tonight, when the soup arrives, and you find a chunk that might actually be meat, take a moment. That's a gift. That's the closest thing to a miracle third class has ever known. The stew sprint, why eating in third class, is basically a sport. By now, you've figured it out. Meals in Titanic's third class are not about leisure. They are about survival. Forget candlelit elegance or drawn-out conversation. In third class, the moment your plate hits the table, the clock starts ticking, though no one tells you how long you got. It's just understood, like gravity or the presence of cabbage. There's no steward with a stopwatch, no friendly reminder that your time is up. Instead, it's the atmosphere, the quiet signals. The person across from you eats like it's a race. The steward clears a plate while you're still chewing. Someone behind you coughs a bit too pointedly. That's your cue. The flow is unspoken, but absolute. Sit, nod, eat like the ship's sinking, leave, and repeat. You learn quickly that there's a rhythm to it all. You glance around, heads down, elbows, tucked jaws moving in hypnotic unison. Spoons scrape bowls with the precision of clockwork. It's almost beautiful, like synchronized chewing. If there's conversation, it's brief. Pass the bread. This fork's still warm. Is this cabbage? Yes, that's it. You try to make eye contact with the steward once just to say thank you, but they're already gone. Ghosts in aprons moving faster than your digestive system can track. Plates appear, vanish, get wiped clean, and relaid with all the efficiency of a military parade. They don't smile. They don't chat. They execute. You adapt. No longer do you savor your tea. You drink it. You inhale stew. You've timed your bread chewing to the background rhythm of 700 spoons in motion. Your body has become a vessel of speed and precision. There is no eating slowly. There is only winning the bench. Every now and then, a brave soul leans back to sigh after a hearty bite. That's when it happens. A shuffle behind them, a polite but firm presence. Translation: you're done. Time to get up. No one yells, no one pushes, but the message is clear. You nod to your table mates. It's a silent ritual now, a nod, a scraped plate, a quick tuck of the mug to one side. You step out. Someone else slides in. It's not personal. It's not rude. It's the way things work. Because in a room designed for 300 trying to feed 700 dawdling is borderline criminal. You'll eat again in a few hours anyway, probably stew again. You're already halfway to a doctorate in root vegetable studies. And weirdly, you don't mind. The rush becomes a rhythm. The urgency becomes habit. You're not just a passenger, now you're a participant, a trained veteran of the Titanic stew cycle, a master of rapid ingestion. You've learned to eat like the ship's on a timer, because in third class, it is the United Nations of stew, when third class becomes the world's mess hall. By now, you've adjusted to the rhythm. You know the temperature at which tea becomes weaponized. You can smell the difference between Tuesday's beef and Thursday's mystery. But one thing still surprises you every single meal, the sheer unbelievable variety of people packed into that narrow saloon on F deck. Titanic's third class isn't just a section. It's a global summit of hope held over stew. You expected to eat with people like you. Same language, same customs, maybe even someone from your town. Instead, you sit elbow to elbow with a Swedish carpenter who eats like he's measuring a cabinet, an Irish widow with 5 children and the strategic instincts of a general, a Serbian grandmother who doesn't speak a word you understand but communicates exclusively through eyebrow raises and loud sighs aimed at the bread. At first, it's disorienting. Then it's strangely comforting, because no one here knows exactly what's going on. And somehow, that shared confusion becomes a kind of glue. There's no seating chart, no attempt to group passengers by nationality or background. You sit where you can. And that randomness, that's what makes it beautiful. You learn to eat across borders. You pass bread to someone whose name you'll never know. You nod thanks when a child hands you an extra spoon, then uses the table as a drum. One meal, you sit beside a Sicilian who prays before eating. Another, a German boy who points at things and makes up names in English. A third, a Syrian merchant who eats slowly and laughs with his whole chest. Sometimes people translate for each other. More often, they just point, shrug, smile. You hear 5 different prayers before the soup arrives. You smell 7 types of clothing soap. You may not know their stories, but you feel them. Because no one ends up in third class on a whim. Everyone's chasing something freedom, safety, family, land, and here, over stew, those dreams bump elbows and spill tea together. There's etiquette, of course, unspoken but ironclad. Don't take more than your share. Laugh quietly. Never judge someone's margarine technique. If a jar of marmalade appears, that table becomes a temporary government. Debates are held. Rations are agreed upon. A small child is elected as guardian of the jar. Order is maintained. And yes, sometimes someone tries to stretch beyond stew talk. A conversation starts. Where are you going? Who did you leave behind? Do you think this bread could stop a bullet? You answer carefully, not because you're afraid, but because you know everyone here is walking a tightrope of fear and hope. This isn't a cruise, it's a passage, a crossing. And that third-class dining room? It's the only place you all stop long enough to remember you're not alone. You finish your stew. You don't know anyone's name. But you'll remember the way the Italian girl laughed when she spilled her tea. The way the Norwegian boy passed his marmalade without being asked. The way the Serbian grandmother shook her head at you and handed you a better spoon. It's not luxury. It's not elegance. But it is humanity. And on a ship divided by decks and titles and invisible lines, third class somehow feels the most united. Dessert dream on. A taste of the first-class life. From F-Deck. By this point, you got third-class dining down to a science. You know when to sit, when to grab the least wobbly spoon, and how to angle your plate just right so the gravy doesn't stage an escape. But eventually, inevitably, curiosity creeps in. What's happening upstairs? What are they eating in first class? And more tragically, what are they not eating down here? Let's start with the obvious. There's no dessert in third class. None. Not a sliver of cake. Not a pudding pretending to be fancy. Not even a sad piece of fruit with delusions of grandeur. You want something sweet? You better hope someone at your table snuck a raisin in from Queenstown and is willing to split it 8 ways. Meanwhile, up on the first-class deck, they're swimming in 10-course meals. Soufflés, fruit compotes, jellies with names that sound like French opera singers. One evening, a steward whispers a rumor they served something called peach compote in chartreuse jelly. You don't even know what chartreuse is. It sounds fictional, magical, illegal. You'd settle for a baked apple and a nap. Then there's the menu, or rather the lack of one. In third class, you don't get choices. You don't ask, what's for dinner? You wait, you accept, you chew. Don't like stew? Tough. Write it a letter. Want extra carrots? Good luck. The ship's carrot economy runs on strict rationing and silent desperation. Meanwhile, upstairs, people are probably saying things like, I'll have the duck, but only if it's precisely medium rare. And the steward just smiles. You asked for a second roll once. The steward looked at you. You don't get wine either, or ale, or anything that requires a cork. We've talked about the tea situation, how it's strong enough to clean a chimney and emotionally steady enough to count as a therapist. But it stings a little more now that you know what's happening above you. Wine pairings, crystal goblets, candles. We don't even get napkins. And forget about ambiance. First class has music, linens, centerpieces. Third class, if someone wipes the table before you sit down, that is the centerpiece. The other night, someone had a slice of orange. It caused a scene. People gathered. A child pointed. An older man whispered, "It's real." It was passed around like a sacred artifact. And yet, here's the strange part. Even without the extras, even without wine menus, candlelight, or dessert, no one in third class is bitter. Not really. Because while first class dines like aristocrats, they also dine in silence, each family in their own corner, drowning in formality and silverware rules. Down here, someone always laughs. Someone always offers bread without being asked. And someone always says something absurd that reminds you you're alive, you're on a ship, and somehow you've grown fond of mystery meat and tea strong enough to dissolve cutlery. No frills, but food warm. Company, loud, unpredictable, sometimes strange, but real. And every time someone passes the bread without a word, you feel it again, that flicker of something that has nothing to do with class or candles or cake. It's enough. Maybe more than enough. The Last Supper, April 14th, 1912. By now you're used to the drill. Wake up, eat potatoes, drink tea, eat more potatoes, drink more tea, repeat. It's comforting, repetitive, grounded. You figured out how to butter the bread without shattering it, how to claim a good bench spot before the toddlers take over, and how to spot the stew that's been stirred most recently. But then comes Sunday, April 14th. And though no one knows it yet, this will be the last supper ever served in Titanic's third-class saloon. Dinner that night is on paper entirely ordinary. More stew, more boiled potatoes, a chunk of roast pork if the kitchen gods were feeling generous. There's a fresh roll that seems fresher than usual. Maybe it's the lighting. Maybe your taste buds have simply evolved to appreciate flour-based optimism. People eat, like always, quickly, casually, contentedly. A couple nearby is celebrating an engagement. Someone's uncle is playing harmonica in a corner. A child spills tea and thinks it's hilarious. And across the room, a steward drops a tray, mutters under his breath, and carries on. It's noisy, chaotic, warm, and normal. You chat briefly with the man next to you. He's headed to New York like everyone else, looking for work, maybe a cousin, maybe just a clean start. You joke that if Titanic keeps feeding you like this, you'll arrive heavier than you left. It's not a great joke, but it gets a laugh. People are hopeful. There's something in the air that evening, not foreboding, not ominous, just ease. The kind of ease you feel when the future seems real, when you can almost taste it in your tea. Parents are calming babies. Young men are trading stories. A few older folks just sip their drinks, staring into the middle distance like they can already see America on the horizon. You finish your stew, the last chunk of meat, the last sip of tea. You rise as always, return your plate as always, think about breakfast as always. You wonder if there'll be marmalade tomorrow. You hope so. You walk the familiar halls back to your cabin legs, tired, stomach content. Outside, the Atlantic stretches black and endless. Inside, the dining saloon goes quiet. Tables wiped down, mugs stacked, benches empty. No one knows that the kitchen has served its final shift, that no more bread will be passed around those tables, that the last bowl of stew has already been ladled. Because final moments rarely announce themselves, they pass like every other, until they don't. And so third class sleeps, not with fear, but with full stomachs and steady hearts, some dreaming of farmland, some of skyscrapers, some of nothing at all of them believing completely that tomorrow would come. Boiled memories when bread and tea are all that's left. After the sinking, the world turned its attention naturally to the grand staircase, the chandeliers, the violinists playing as the ship slipped beneath the sea, to the ballrooms, the domed ceilings, the gilded dining halls where menus listed 10 courses and champagne had its own budget line. But far below that drama, buried in the cold Atlantic, lies another room, a smaller one, painted white, tiled floors, wooden benches bolted to the ground. Titanic's third-class dining saloon. No orchestra played there, no photographers took pictures, no menus were saved in gilded frames. But that was where over 700 men, women, and children shared their final meals, not with extravagance, but with hope. There were no speeches, no toasts, no soft piano in the background, just the quiet clatter of cutlery, the boiling hush of stew, and the sound of people, strangers, eating together in shared belief that the world was about to open for them. Mothers slicing bread into equal parts for children, fathers pretending to like cabbage so their daughters would eat, young couples trading jokes over potatoes, teacups raised like toasts to the unknown. They weren't sipping vintage wines or choosing between duck and lamb. They were folding coats over sleeping toddlers, arguing over whether that mystery vegetable was a parsnip or a carrot, and hoping there'd be marmalade in the morning. And that was the last time many of them felt safe. Much of it, of course, was lost. The tables, the bowls, the spoons, the trays, they all went down with the ship. No one preserved the bread crusts. No one wrote down the soup recipes. No one framed a third-class teacup on a museum wall. And yet, the memories linger. Some survivors later spoke of that final meal not because it was extraordinary, but because it was ordinary, because it was the last moment life made sense, the last moment where hope still had a seat at the table. They remembered the stew, the laughter, the crowded benches, and the feeling more than anything else of belonging. We don't talk much about third-class meals when we talk about Titanic. They're not glamorous. They're not tragic enough to headline a documentary, but they matter. Because in those final hours, before the panic, before the lifeboats, before the water turned everything cold and cruel, there was warmth. There was routine. There was tea. And so, if you listen closely, not just to the ship's legacy, but to the silences in between the headlines, you can almost hear it. The clang of cutlery, the bubbling of stew, the overlapping hum of a dozen languages all asking for bread at the same time. You hear humanity. Third class didn't have linens or string quartets, but it had something better. It had community. And in a ship divided by class and silverware, sometimes that's the only thing that floats. Standards in steerage, where elbows, spoons, and manners collide. By the time your body adjusts to the ship's roll, your taste buds have been boiled into submission, and your tea tolerance reaches near heroic levels. You start noticing the unwritten rules of third-class dining. Not rules enforced by stewards or signs, rules enforced by glances, body language, and the subtle weight of shared space. Because in a room meant for 300, but feeding over 700 manners aren't optional. They're survival. It starts with space. You learn to stake your claim early, not aggressively, but assertively. One cheek on the bench elbows, in plate centered. That's your zone. You don't spread out. You don't lounge. You definitely don't bring a steamer trunk to the table. Then comes movement. Every action, sipping, cutting, reaching for the bread, is performed with surgical efficiency. No flailing, no dramatic knife gestures. You're surrounded. One wrong move and someone's getting tea to the ribs. Conversation. Possible, but brief. A quick pass the salt, which might not actually be salt. A murmured, "That stew was hotter than hell." A quiet chuckle at a child announcing they've named their potato. That's it. This isn't first class where they debate opera and discuss estates between oysters. In third class, you discuss stew viscosity and compare bread densities. Then there's cutlery etiquette. You don't drop your spoon, ever. Not because it's irreplaceable, but because the moment you do, it's gone. Swallowed by the undertable void, claimed by a child, or if it lands in someone else's stew, claimed by fate. You place your spoon gently on your plate when finished, like laying a soldier to rest. You never clink your mug unnecessarily, and you never try to swipe an extra roll while someone's praying. There's a rhythm, a choreography that emerges over time. You begin to eat not just with your neighbors, but with their timing. You know when someone's about to ask for the bread. You anticipate when the teapot's low. You read someone's entire life story from the way they tear a roll in half. And then there's the clean exit. The moment your last bite is swallowed and your tea is downed, not too fast, not too slow. You perform the ritual. Spoon to plate, mug to side, brief nod to tablemates. Stand, slide out, move. It's elegant, it's practiced, it's necessary. Behind you, someone else is already hovering bowl in hand, ready to take your seat, like a relay runner grabbing the baton. But here's what's truly remarkable. None of this is taught. It's not in a manual. No one explains it to you. There's no steward holding a training session on how to eat without inciting chaos. You just learn from glances, from grunts, from the quiet shared understanding that when 700 people are fed by the same kitchen, every act of civility is sacred. And over time, you come to appreciate the structure, the ritual, the rhythm. You come to realize that what began as cramped and chaotic now feels almost refined in its own humble elbow-to-elbow, cabbage-scented way. Because in third-class, dignity isn't about decoration. It's about how you carry yourself in the stew line.